She also received the ICSSR Senior Research Fellowship in 2016 to study the functioning of the electoral administration of India.
Thanks a lot. This is just continuing where we ended the last session, the link of the same chain. And the book which we are going to discuss today, Kunal is here, the author, is H-Pop, Hindutva Pop, The Secretive World of Hindutva Pop Stars. About the author, Kunal has been a journalist for now nearly 20 years, widely traveled. He's an award-winning journalist, having won awards like the Ramnath Goenka Award for Excellence in Civic Journalism, Statesman Award for Rural Reporting, 2014, the earlier one was 2012, the UNFPA Ladli Media Award for Gender Sensitive Reporting, 2014 and 2019. So one can see from these awards the wide range of issues and areas he covers. He has been writing very prolifically, writing for Al Jazeera, ProPublica, the Times of India, the Hindustan Times, Foreign Policy, The Wire, Deutsche Welle, etc. Very widely traveled, has written on a number of issues, and has now come up with this book, H-Pop. The book takes you on a journey of a very different world. As Kunal himself says, it's a world which is dusty. These are sleepy towns. They are not much under the media scanner. And Kunal here takes us through a journey of the popular culture enmeshed with politics. And the popular culture which he explores is inclusive of songs, the Hindutva pop songs, very catchy songs with, sort of set on very catchy tunes, poetry, and social media influencers. And he shows us that along the journey, these singers, these poets, these influencers have come to gather a number of followers. Their presence is there on social media, they are giving live performances, not covered in the mainstream media, not sort of very well known among, city dwellers like us, big cities. But, in small towns, these sleepy towns, they are sort of normalizing a very macho, very majoritarian, muscular Hindu nationalism. A very strong, a very deep, divisive idea of a Hindu nationhood. So no headlines are made, but there's a very clear process, very unambiguous process of othering which is going on, villainization of minorities, vilification of the critics, and he raises questions like, why is Hindutva popular, H-pop so popular? Who are its stars and audience? Who's pouring in the money, the effort, the resources into it? What are its political effects? And what kind of India it's shaping? So for answers to these questions now, I turn to Kunal himself, and I'm sure the audience is waiting, so I don't want to speak anymore. So my first question is, again, I want to know, and this is something Vinod also did in the last session, that this particular question that, you're writing on so many things, but as a journalist, why this particular theme for a book? You want to go into details and bring out the details of things, but why this particular theme?
Firstly, Manjari, thank you for having me here. Thank you to HLF. When we talk about the post-lunch session, I was afraid that it'll be you, me, and maybe a couple of volunteers. But I think Hindutva does keep people awake for the right and the wrong reasons. It's interesting you mentioned, the wide scope of work that I've done. And over the last few years, one of the things that I've consistently focused on, unfortunately, has been the rise of hate crimes across the country. Right? Over the past 5 years or so, I've sought to travel to different parts of the country after the hate crimes have happened, sometimes much after, sometimes months after, and just sort to understand why those hate crimes happened. I think one of the problems with the way the media reports hate crimes, including people like me, is that we tend to look at them as events. There's a lynching that happens, it's an event, we focus on it, we report on it for a few days, and then we move on. Similarly the case with riots, similarly the case with hate speeches. And I don't need to tell an audience in Hyderabad what hate speech means. You have a very, very popular MLA from here who's very popular in Maharashtra for his hate speeches. So we tend to look at these as these events that happen, and then we sort of move on and forget. But one thing that I did realize in my reporting, Manjari, is that there is a process that happens before the event, right? It precedes the event. It's the build-up to the event that we often forget to capture. And it was during one such reporting trip when I went to this small town called Gumla in Jharkhand, where a hate crime had happened. And the hate crime happened on the day of Ram Navami, which is, if you guys know, a massively popular festival in Jharkhand. Tens of thousands of people gather on the streets, they take processions, they snake across the town, and then they finally culminate the procession at the temple, at the Ram temple. So, like every year in Gumla, that year also, this procession was sort of snaking its way across Gumla. When it reached the Jama Masjid of Gumla, which is the main mosque in the town, and like every year, the local Muslims, the local shopkeepers, both Hindus and Muslims, had gathered outside the mosque, waiting to welcome the procession. So they would exchange pleasantries, they would offer refreshments, and then the procession would carry on. So it was a very beautiful, syncretic sort of practice that the town had been seeing for many, many years, except that one year, when the procession entered, suddenly the music in the procession flipped. And on came a song whose words were to the effect, Mulle ki topi gira do. Right? So when all of the gathered Muslims and the local Hindus were waiting for the procession, suddenly there was a sense of nervous energy in that whole lane, and I write in my book that the procession turned into a mob. Because in came a lot of assertiveness, a lot of aggression, the body language became very hostile, and it could have turned into a riot at any point. Thankfully, the police intervened, they switched off the music, they told the procession to hurry up and pass by. And most people thought the story had ended that night, except when some of the processionists, after finishing the procession, were going back home. Three of them saw a Muslim boy talking to a Hindu girl, which was about 3 kilometers away from this mosque. They tie him up to an electric pole and they beat him till he falls dead, only because he was talking to a Hindu girl, and in their mind was this belief that this was love jihad in the making. I couldn't sleep for the most part of that night because my mind was blown. That was the night that I discovered that songs could drive people into such frenzy. One doesn't know if it was the song that drove them to kill, but one does know that the song drove them into a frenzy at that point outside the mosque. And that was the night that I talk about how the book was also born. And I mean, to my horror, the more I dug into it, the more I realized that there was a very vibrant ecosystem which was keeping all of these songs active, which was giving them a very, very wide audience, millions of people listening to it. A lot of these pop stars, as you said, go and travel across the country. They do concerts where people come and listen to these songs. These songs are played everywhere, including at the Narendra Modi Stadium when India and Pakistan played each other. So that is how the process started, and then I decided that I needed to spend some time, and 4 years later, the book is now here. Yeah.
Okay. Kunal, you knit a very good sort of a piece of the situation of our times, the politics, and particularly these three individuals about whom you have talked about in detail. So can you tell our audience, I mean, who are these people, these singers, the poets, the influencers on social media in terms of their profile. I mean, where do they come from? What is their location socioeconomically? I mean, that will tell us that sort of who's the protagonist here, to this sort of culture, pop
So
culture.
the way I've divided the book is that there are three sections to it. I obviously started with music because that's how I stumbled upon the world of Hindutva pop. But then I realized it wasn't just music. There were various other genres of popular culture. The second one was poetry that I chose. So there is an immense amount of Hindutva fused poetry that is coming out, especially in Hindi. And maybe audiences here may or may not know, but Kavi Sammelans as a form of entertainment is still very vibrant in the semi-rural and the rural parts of especially North and Western India. So a lot of these poets travel across these smaller towns and recite this poetry, which at its core has some of the most hardline elements of Hindutva, and then they recite it in a way that makes it very palatable. The beliefs in the Hindutva ecosystem get translated into rhymes, and people find themselves to be agreeing with it a lot more, if as against maybe listening to a hate speech. So the second genre that I'm looking at is poetry. The third one that I'm looking at is books, and we sit here and talk about this at a lit fest, but even literature as a genre has been utilized and in some ways has been weaponized by the Hindutva ecosystem to constantly churn out books which further and further reiterate what the core beliefs of Hindutva are. It will tell you some of the books that I've come across and read will tell you how the partition of India was basically a ploy by Gandhi at the behest of Muslims, right? It would relook at the legacies of people like Nehru, like Gandhi, cast them in a very, very different light. It would look at, so there's a book called The Red Fort of Agra is actually a temple, and it's as out there as it can in terms of the title. So these are the kinds of books that are also being created, and for all of the three sections, I've got one character whose story I follow for 4 years. I follow the ups and downs in their lives, and you find a lot about them, in their lives, their families, because I want to tell all of you as well that the even if you're not ideologically, seeing eye to eye with them, they are people like us, They have ambitions like us. The fears are sometimes very different, but you could easily meet them somewhere here. You could easily have a conversation with them. So this point about demonizing the other because they're ideologically different, I think in some ways is also counterproductive because it's not allowing us to have conversations. And one of the things that I've done very deliberately in my book is to try and go deep into their lives, to try and tell the reader how their lives are actually very, very relatable in so many different ways. So that's broadly, the book and the three genres. The three characters quickly are, the singer that I focus on is this 26-year-old Haryanvi singer. She's a woman by the name Kavi Singh. She's extremely popular, has over 1 million followers on different platforms. There is a poet by the name of Kamal Agne, who is from a small town outside of Lucknow, and he creates poetry on some of the most hardline stuff about Hindutva. And the third one is a guy called Sandeep Dev, who used to be a journalist, then became an author, and now has started his own publishing house because he firmly believes that Hindus are facing a cultural war. They are facing an existential crisis and an existential war from everyone, from Muslims and Christians to Netflix to Amazon. All of these elements are conspiring against the Hindus and are trying to pull Hindus down. And he considers himself to be the commander-in-chief in some ways of this war. So that's about the three characters.
Yes. Yeah. And now I want to sort of touch upon something which is, which looks very mundane, but it's, sort of forms the foundation of the production of this poetry, these songs. I mean, the kind of business model which is being followed, because of course, production and the circulation of these songs and the poetry, even the short pieces which Sandeep Dev writes and puts on social media daily. I mean, where do they draw the resources? I mean, where does the money come from to do this sort of, production and circulation?
I mean, Manjari, I think it's fairly clear to a lot of us now that hate and Hindutva make for great business. It's a smashing commercial combination to have. And that is something that they've also over time realized, that the kind of content that they create is financially not just sustainable, but extremely rewarding. And I'll give you an example of why I say that. The singer in my book, Kavi Singh, her first song is she sings that song just days after the Pulwama terror attack in 2019, when we were all sort of angry and outraged and looking for answers as to how could such a terrible terror attack happen. She performs a song which becomes an absolute viral hit about how you should not be blaming Pakistan, you should not be blaming terrorists, but you should in effect be blaming the Muslims living amongst us, because they are the ones who made the terror attack possible. And that song becomes an absolute hit, and she becomes a sensation. After that song, she starts singing different kinds of songs. So there's seemingly benign political topics, like she says there's a song about voter awareness, about how we should all vote. There's a song about how great India is, fairly apolitical in that sense, doesn't have too much of Hindutva stuff. And none of these songs, and she does about 3 or 4 of them, none of these songs get her anything as close to the popularity that the first song got her. And she's sitting there thinking, I made that song overnight, literally overnight. She went into the studio one night, the next morning the song was out, by the next day the song was a hit. And now she's sitting here, she's writing the lyrics carefully, she's spending more time, getting better music in place, and none of these songs are a hit anymore. And, in her reflection, she realizes that what gave me the popularity is the fact that it was so out there and so brazen in its politics, that I was telling people, this is the person you have to hate. And people latched onto it, people loved it. And so she realizes that this is the way I need to be if my career has to progress. So I think that is the point of reflection for us as a society as well, that if this is the kind of content that is also creating fans, if it's getting viral, then what does it say for a country like us?
Do you think that, we are in a world of social media now, so has that made it much easier for, the circulation, the popularity, and, just a sort of a reproduction of a certain kind of opinion? I mean, so hate-filled, and is it that situation, do you feel that it's partly to do with social media?
Absolutely. I mean, all of these characters that I've spoken about, they have very vibrant offline presence, so they do things on the ground, they go to the ground, they do concerts. For instance, Kavi Singh travels across, she does concerts, she attends programs by the Hindu right wing. Kamal Agne, the poet, will also travel to smaller towns, to villages, he will perform his poetry. So there is a lot of things that they are doing on the ground. But there's also a substantial chunk of their presence which is online. On YouTube and Facebook and Instagram become the hotbed really of the Hindu right-wing ecosystem. Because, they're not just finding newer audiences. What we don't realize is happening is that all of these platforms, but especially YouTube, is actively funding so much of this hate. Because they get money out of YouTube videos, right? Their YouTube channels are monetized. So YouTube, in effect, is saying, I like what you're doing, continue doing this, but I'm also giving you more money. So invest more money, get more content out, so that I can then spread it to more and more people. And I get more money that way, and you get more followers, and you get more audiences. So social media has not just sustained them, but has actively stoked and funded so much of the virality that these people get. So yeah, I mean, they would have existed without social media, but I think social media has only ensured that they comfortably exist, and sometimes also with a lot of riches.
I would now just drawing a comparison, I mean, we have Bollywood songs, I mean, we are a country of song and dance and so much of popularity attached to that. I mean, all of us sort of, even if you are not sort of open about singing, but, like bathroom singers, I mean, this was a phrase which used to come in popular, songs, and all of us sort of part of that popular culture. And also the Kavi Sammelans, Kavi Sammelans happening and people going to them and closer. Yeah. The Kavi Sammelans, people going to them, attending them, and very popular sort of events. So if we draw a comparison, so is it the same sort of popularity, the attachment which is there to Bollywood songs and the Kavi Sammelans, which was there once upon a time, is somehow sort of also being shared now with this new genre of songs which are attached to, nationhood and Hindutva and vilification of minorities? I mean, do you see something there that's where the popularity can be stretched?
No, definitely. I mean, so, they can coexist. Hindutva pop culture can coexist with a Bollywood, with other genres of music and popular culture. But I think the uniqueness about some of this pop culture that I talk about is that it speaks to so many different emotions. It speaks to emotions of your religion, of the existential fears that some of you or some of us may be harboring. It speaks to devotion. It speaks to the feelings of nationalism, and which is why I think Hindutva pop culture carries that enhanced credibility when it comes to looking into the eyes of the audience. And I'll give you an example of why I say this. Kavi Singh, the singer that I talk about, this was just before the Kumbh Mela in 2021, and I was traveling with her, and we had gone to Haridwar. We were on the banks of the Ganga river, and we were she was washing her feet and she was worshipping the river and things, and in comes a man who must be all of say 30 or so, and he identifies her and he says, oh, you're Kavi Singh, right? So she says, yeah. And he says, oh, I love your music, I am from Maharashtra, I follow it, we all love your music. And she says, oh, that's very nice to hear. And none of that is very surprising, because as I said, they're very, very popular. But what he does next is what sort of blew my mind. He said, can I wash your feet with the water of the Ganga? So I just looked at Kavi directly, and then I looked at him, and he says, can I please wash it? I really want to. And she says, no, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. I wouldn't feel comfortable. And that is that moment signified to me that none of us sitting here would do it for the Eagles or for the Beatles or for George Harrison or for Arijit Singh or Sunidhi Chauhan. I mean, I don't envisage us doing any of that, right? The reason why it gets to the point that they feel like these people should be worshipped is because I spoke to that guy after, and he said what she's doing is God's duty. She's awakening all of us Hindus. She's not doing it for herself. She's not doing it for a Rajya Sabha seat. She's not getting anything out of it. She's doing this because Hindu jagane hai unko. वो धर्म के लिए काम कर रही है वो. So the credibility and the legitimacy that Hindutva pop enjoys is very different from what all of the other popular culture forms that we spoke about will enjoy, and that is what I think makes it such an insidious and such a potent form of popular culture.
Coming to politics, power politics and popular culture, I mean, you have sketched a very sort of broad, very detailed picture of how this nexus works. So now I would urge you to just tell us and tell our audience about how does this work? I mean, are these singers and poets invited to political rallies? Are they asked to carry out political campaigns? How does it work, this nexus work?
I think it works in both ways. I think somewhere one of the flaws of our analysis of the Hindu right wing is that we believe that everything that is speaking for the Hindu right wing is sponsored or orchestrated by the BJP or the RSS or the Sangh Parivar, right? In my reporting experience, that is not the case. None of these three, for instance, were people who inherently belonged to the Sangh Parivar or any of the organizations. They took it up for different reasons, but mostly out of a sense of ideological commitment towards the cause and a firm belief that they want to use their skills to further the cause of Hindutva. So what happens is, yes, there are times when the BJP and the RSS and all of the other organizations will actively promote some of them, but most times what they do is they sit back and see how a Kavi Singh is doing or how a Kamal Agne is doing, the poet in my book, right? They'll see that if these characters, if their stars are rising and if they're gaining more and more popularity, that's when the Hindu right-wing ecosystem, the formal structure, comes in and co-opts them, and says, okay, why don't you come and do this for us? Or why, we'll give you platforms. So the VHP would then do a rally where they would invite one of these characters, right? Or they would get a platform as big as, maybe thousands of people and say, you're all going to witness a performance by this singer who's going to tell you songs about Hindutva. So there is that kind of symbiosis that also happens. And I'll give you an example of how sometimes so beautifully it works to the BJP's advantage. I was covering the UP elections and I was tracking it from Bombay, and I was supposed to go, this is in 2021 again, when Yogi Adityanath was up for his re-election. And even though I was tracking it very closely, I'd never heard of this song. But the minute I landed in UP, and then the minute I sort of, went around in its public buses, I went to chai tapris, everyone was talking about this song or listening to this song. And the song was, जो राम को लाए हैं, हम उनको लाएंगे, यूपी में फिर से हम भगवा लहराएंगे. Now, this was a song that, came out maybe a month and a half before the elections, very, very strategically. The song became an absolute viral hit, right? As I said, it was everywhere. The people I was calling, they had their caller tunes as this song. You could hear it at various places. And so the BJP noticed that this song was getting increasingly popular. And the singer of the song, this guy that I've also written about in my book, and I've interviewed him, this guy called Kanhaiya Mittal, they quickly are quick to sort of pounce upon him and get him on board as a star campaigner. And within a few days, I see on Kanhaiya Mittal's WhatsApp status, he's flying on private chartered jets, going from one rally to another, setting the stage before Modi ji, Yogi ji, Amit ji, all of these Gs can come and start delivering their speeches. Right? So he's keeping the crowds warmed by singing this song and by reiterating the fact कि याद रखना राम मंदिर, राम को वापस लाए हैं वो. And if you see, interestingly, it's the same rhetoric that has now been employed in the last 1 week, where we are told that Lord Ram has returned, as if to believe that he had actually gone somewhere, but he has returned very firmly. And this is the way, both of these worlds actually work very beautifully with each other and for mutual benefit. Because the BJP won the elections and Kanhaiya Mittal got rides on a private charter jet. And if that was not it, when Yogi came back to power, he awarded Kanhaiya Mittal, and we mentioned this, he awarded Kanhaiya Mittal a cash prize and a trophy. And Kanhaiya Mittal, like a dutiful soldier, said, I want to give this cash prize back. आप ये पैसे से एक bulldozer खरीद लीजिए. So this is how the two worlds also meet and collide.
A related question. Kunal, are these songs, at least initially when they began and when they came up on the radar, were they reactive to events like Pulwama or something? Or, they were already there in circulation, and when, the society gets, more polarized, they all of a sudden come up and get circulated. I mean, what is the scene?
I think like all right-wing ideologies, even the Hindu right-wing constantly needs new enemies to keep itself relevant, to keep people, mobilized, to keep them sort of feeling like they're under threat. So what you would see is that there are a lot of songs which talk about the old traditional enemies, like the Muslims and Pakistan and things like that. But then you'll also hear songs which are, to do with events. So when the JNU students protest, there's a flurry of the songs and poetry that is written demonizing JNU and demonizing JNU students, right? Or when a Mehbooba Mufti says something which is critical of Modi, critical of the BJP, or critical of the Indian state's position, there will be a song saying, what was it? I forgot. I mean, there should be a family disclaimer for this, but it says something to the effect of Mehbooba says, Mehbooba kehti hai, aha ha, and stuff like that. So, there are these songs which will then attack all of these characters and create fresh enemies out of them, right? Just to reiterate how all of these are not just enemies of the BJP or of Modi, but they're enemies of Hindus, enemy of the Hindu right wing. So they're very, very shape-shifting in some ways, and then they're very malleable, and that is what is also so insidious about it, because they're not just focusing on some things. Like the other day, someone asked me, they said, now that the Ram Mandir is built, what next? But I said, there will be other things, right? And we've already seen Kashi Mathura Baki hai, and that is now in process. So there will be creation of more and more enemies. There will be fresh topics that the pop culture will look at and constantly create new and new content around it.
Can you also tell us about the audience? I mean, who are the audience when the live performances take place? Are these mainly men of a certain age group? I mean, you have journalistic experience, so, are these the unemployed youth? Who are these people who constitute the main audience of these songs and these Kavi Sammelans?
When I started off doing this 4 years ago, my assumption was that the audience for this popular culture is mostly rural, is, the categories that you said, some of them unemployed, some of them from the agrarian community, and so on and so forth, and mostly male. But in the last 4 years or so, and especially in the last 1 year, I have increasingly seen that the audience actually is very much people like us also. Right? I'm seeing that these songs are now no longer in a small town in UP. They are, as I said, they are being played at the cricket stadium, at the Narendra Modi cricket stadium, no less. They are played in Ganpati festivities in Mumbai. They're played in Navratri festivities in Mumbai. They are played in various occasions, and they're not just that, but they're also played in college campuses in major cities of India. So I think there's a lot that we need to then unpack there about the fact that this is an audience which is not just a homogeneous sort of set of people who we assume will be towards Hindutva. I think the popularity of this pop culture is so widespread now, and it's across rural and urban, it's across the young and old, it's across gender, caste, it's across caste, it's across so many different lines. So it's very difficult to then pinpoint and now say, okay, it's actually only these people who listen to it. Because, I mean, and to give you an example, one can imagine the popularity of this kind of pop culture by the fact that I wrote about it on Al Jazeera as well. From January 1st to when the temple was consecrated, the Prime Minister, despite his busy schedule, was tweeting out a bhajan every single day, a Ram bhajan every single day, right? Just and most of those bhajans that he was tweeting out were all new bhajans that were constantly being created by popular singers, by people like Kailash Kher, by people like Sonu Nigam, by people like Shan. So all of these people were creating Ram bhajans which were adding to the public mood, to the festivities and to the occasion, to make you believe that Ram wapas aa gaye hain, right? So I think the audience for it is so widespread that now a lot of mainstream singers who one would think would not want to do anything with Hindutva pop are also increasingly either being forced to or are willingly wanting to take a share of the Hindutva pie.
So you mean to say the canvas sort of that's growing, I mean the terrain is growing, and people who are not earlier associated with this are also jumping on the bandwagon and want to have something to do with this so that they gain in popularity or something
Absolutely,
like that. The mainstream
absolutely.
singers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, in Mumbai, Navratri festivities have been happening for many, many years. And in the last 1 year or so, I see very popular singers, who you'd have to buy tickets for. The tickets would cost you anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 rupees for the night. They are playing songs like Bharat Ka Bachcha Bachcha Jai Shri Ram Bolega. And people are dancing to it, people are loving it, including women, including the young, including the old. So it's very difficult now to specify that there is this one small community of people who are listening to or who are consuming this popular culture.
So, where does the sort of the other, the entity who has been vilified, the Muslim, I mean, these songs, as you pointed out, are, about 90%, 95% is about vilification and about, Islamophobia and all. So, does it restrict, is this restricted to the performance, the audience, the event? Or it has its ripple effects. Of course, we know it has its ripple effects and it's sort of spreading, but how immediate is that? So, as a journalist, what was your experience?
No, as I said, I mean, my inquiry into the subject started when I saw what happened, two separate events possibly linked together with that song on that night in Jharkhand, in Gumla, on Ram Navami Day. So sometimes you see that there can be a very immediate reaction. And one social experiment that maybe all of us can do after the session is over is just Google the words music, mosque, violence, tensions, just these keywords. And you'll see that this has been happening in so many different parts of the country, including on the outskirts of Mumbai just a few days ago. So you're increasingly seeing that music has become a form of provocation, and of using it to mobilize people against the other. And sometimes there can be an immediate reaction and sometimes there won't. But what one can tell is that this everyday radicalization is having very, very dangerous effects in our society. Hate speech is up, so hate speeches, and there is government data to point. Between 2014 and 2020, 500% increase in hate speech by the government's data, by the union government's data. So, you're seeing that there is this constant atmosphere being created where hate is playing out to you at different levels. It's not just in political rallies, but now it's also in songs, it's in films, by the way. Right? So cinema is now the next frontier of hate. When you see films like the Kerala Story, when you see films like Kashmir Files, they're constantly trying to create this, and almost make it permanent, this anti-Muslim bias that some of us carried as baggage from our generations. It's sometime earlier, as I said, these events used to happen, a riot used to happen, or a lynching, or any kind of violence on communal lines would happen, and people would tensions would be inflamed, people would feel angry, and then things would peter down. But with this kind of popular culture, you're constantly being kept on boil because you're listening to it at all times. You're consuming it at all times without you even actively wanting to participate in hate. You think you're just listening to a song. And mind you, most of these songs, Manjari, are extremely tappy. They're so, you can be tapping your foot, you can be, swaying. The beats are extremely catchy, and then, sometimes, it's a terrible thing to say, but sometimes I wake up in the morning with a song in my head, and then it's very, very catchy. So you are being entertained while, you're being fed hate against someone next to you. So my question is, how long before it's too long, right?
So just one last question, and then we have to open the session up to the audience. It's about the political ambition of these very people. I mean, they have been sort of, they have a work cut out for them for mobilizing for Hindutva, but their own political ambitions. And very precisely, because then we'll open up.
So it's interesting. I mean, they start off most times as very ideologically committed foot soldiers, and they tell themselves that this is my role. I want to be a committed foot soldier and nothing more. But when they see how their work is helping the BJP come to power, or help the BJP shape opinions, they suddenly sit back and say, wait, hang on, I got you there. I gave you all of this space, and I'm still sitting here. You've got your ministries, you've become the CM, you've got everything going. Why am I not getting a share of the pie? So a lot of them started, and have started, and my book talks about that as well, of how they started harboring this feeling of resentment towards the BJP and towards the Hindu right wing, because they said, you're utilizing our services and our skills, but we don't get anything in return. Right? So the book will tell you more about how they then navigate that journey of their own political ambitions, but then faced with this dominant political ideology of the day.
Thank you very much, for answering my questions. Now the floor is open for questions. So, yeah, there.
Yeah, hi Kunal.
Hi.
So I'm very intrigued about this Kavi Singh. So my question to you is, when she wrote that piece on Pulwama, was she wasn't already a foot soldier, as you call her, was she? And that, from my understanding, what you said was that she realized that this is the kind of song that will get her attention. So really my question is, what was her orientation that prompted her to write something like that? Did she have any exposure earlier to the Sangh Parivar groups, some RSS Shakha, or was it, as you say, this underlying anti-Muslim bias that is anyway there in so many people who don't even think about it, as we realize after the 92-93 riots in Mumbai, all that talk about cosmopolitanism, you just scratched the surface and you knew that was not true. So I'm just intrigued that a person like that, how does she then become a foot soldier? What is the journey that led to that?
So,
Anybody else? Yeah. Just.
Thanks, Kunal. You said that originally BJP was not part of this entire Hindutva thing, right? I mean, they didn't start from there, or maybe I heard you wrong. But later, when they saw the Hindutva bandwagon through H-pop picking up, they sort of said, this is convenient for us, this suits us. Did I hear you right, or did I get that wrong? Yeah.
I was saying that in some of these cases, it's not that the BJP is funding the creation of this.
Okay.
When they see the popularity rise, especially in individual cases and songs, is when they co-opt some of these artists and say, okay, why don't you do this for us? So they don't start off being a creation of the BJP or the RSS. Okay. They somewhere get enmeshed with the party and
it's
the
convenient
organization.
for them. It works for them. Okay. My question is, this silence by the others is scary. Is this the eye before the backlash starts? Somewhere are we headed for something far more disastrous?
Two questions?
Yeah, that's okay.
So quickly, Kalpana, the question about Kavi Singh, it's interesting because in my book, one of the things that I've very deliberately done is gone into their backstories as individuals, right? Also sort of looked at what their childhoods were like and what were the experiences shaping them. Was it trauma? Was it what? And one of the things in Kavi's case was that she used to have Muslim friends, she told me. But then she said, pata nahi wo Pakistan cricket mein jeeti thi, so they used to celebrate. And then she saw Gadar as a child. So she said, oh, I realized that is how Muslims are. So for her, that became a bit of a point of radicalization. But the moment of Pulwama, when she sings, and she's never sung a song before in her life at this point, she was, she was delivering cosmetic treatments, working at a beauty parlor in a small town in Haryana, when her father, who's anyway a Haryanvi singer by the name of Ramkesh Jivanpurwala, he, sort of says, okay, why don't you start singing? Because she was humming in the kitchen while she was cooking food. So that is how she becomes a singer. Pulwama is based on a poem that was written by a poet they knew. She didn't write the words herself. So it resonated with her and her father, and they decided to sing the song. But it wasn't their composition to begin with in that sense. About the question, listen, that is a question that also honestly troubles me, sometimes gives me sleepless nights. I don't know what the reactions are. I mean, one can hope that, that before things get to the point where there is a reaction from any of the others, I hope that tempers can be calmed and that we find a sense of balance to our life and to our community. But I don't know what that is like. I mean, I hear of cases where, people are obviously being fed some of this and shown this to radicalize, right? We've seen that happen after Gujarat 2002 as well. When especially in Mumbai and Maharashtra, we would find, young men who were being radicalized by showing visuals of the riots of 2002. So I don't know. I mean, I hope that we don't get there.
Thank you. Thank you for, it was rather terrifying. And so my question is actually about, how we can go beyond that, actually pushing you a little bit for what you said just now. You said that, this vilifying of the other doesn't lead us anywhere. And you're so right, because we know how family WhatsApp groups are really like a repository, like a reflection of that. So because you spent so much time with them and you were in conversation with them, what did you discover in yourself that allowed you to keep that dialogue? And did you find something that we can take from that to be able to, because I find it difficult to talk, so, and that's not the answer, so.
Sure, one or two? Okay, just quickly, I think journalists don't have the privilege of not having a conversation, right? Or they shouldn't, at least. We don't have the privilege of turning our backs and saying, oh, this is a part that I don't like and I'm not going to engage with. I think more than ever before, journalists need to step up and they need to become the bridge between two very, very polarized parts of our society. So the reason why I even wrote this and 4 years of spending time with them, understanding their lives, sometimes, in great disagreement. And they knew that, so working through that, the reason why I continued to do this was because I feel the story was much more important than what my personal ideological leanings can be. This room is full because everyone wants to know about Hindutva pop. It doesn't matter if it's Kunal Purohit or if it's someone else. So the room is not for Kunal Purohit, the room is for the issue, for the story. And I think it's a great lesson for every journalist out there to remember that the story is always bigger than you. You're never bigger than the story. And especially in times like this, I think we must remember this lesson.
We are running short of time, so just one more question there. Yes. Gentleman there behind. Yes.
Good afternoon. So, with your work, do you also see beyond the communal other? Do you also see a critique of modern day secularism or modernity itself within the way these things are produced? And point two, is there a movement from folklore towards a critique of the nation state, or how does this happen in the songs?
Okay, quickly here one. It does, in fact, I've had substantial portions of the characters themselves telling me what their problems with the liberal order is. Their experiences with quote-unquote secular spaces where they were not given opportunities to speak because they were sort of shunned away as being communal-minded. And I think that there is a great lesson there about how we must be, if you're liberal enough, then you must be liberal enough to be also tolerant of other people's opinions. And I think that space has to be created so much more. So to answer that question, and the second one, I don't necessarily see that transition as much in the songs, at least. The songs tend to be much more explicit about their viewpoints or their issues, or as I said, very particular moments in time.
One last question, just quickly, please get up and,
Good evening, everybody. Let me give you a different perspective, Kunal. We migrated from Pakistan. We are Punjabis to Hyderabad. I was born in Hyderabad. We are here almost after 47. I grew up in Hyderabad, the old and new Hyderabad. This, what you are saying about the whole book is not new to us. It's nothing new. In the Muslim fraternity, where we have been growing up with a neighborhood, the Qawwalis, in the masjids, whatever, the pop culture has been existing for donkey years. And Raja Singh is a very new poster boy. We have seen now, not the current MP, his father, the original MIM Salahuddin. This has been existing for donkey years, last 60, 70 years.
So what is your question?
The question is the manifestation. This is the manifestation and the counterbalance which the new masculine Hindutva started. This is just a new manifestation of that. That are my personal views again. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, as I said, I think it's the most dominant political ideology of the day. And you will increasingly see popular culture that is created to support that political ideology. The question, sir, should not as much be, or the issue here should not be as much whether it is a continuation of an old tradition. The question should be, should this exist? Should this othering exist? Right? So instead of looking for justifications on why this is existing, which is important, I'm not saying it's not important to understand. I think it's more urgent that we somewhere stop we switch off the tap of hate that is currently on in full spate. Because it's, as I said, yesterday it was another victim, today is another victim, tomorrow it will be another victim, right? So I hope that as victims of hate at some point, we all also understand how crucial it is to stop hating each other on the basis of religion, caste, creed, gender, everything. Yeah.
Right. Yes, we can carry on the conversation outside. We have completely run out of time. There are lots of questions. Thanks, Kunal, for being with us. It was a very nice conversation. I really enjoyed both the book and thanks to all of you.